All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Digital Town Hall. My name is Kate Logan, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight in my new role as the Director of Programming and Policy for Rights and Democracy, or RAD. I'm a feminist, social, and political theory scholar, specializing in family policy, participatory democracy, and human rights, as well as having a background in labor and community organizing and nonprofit management. Working for rights and democracy gives me the opportunity to put all of these passions and skills to use in helping to build a more just and sustainable future for Vermonters. RAD is a grassroots working families organization based in Vermont and New Hampshire. RAD was founded in 2015 by a team of grassroots, labor, environmental, and youth organizers from a broad range of movements with the goal to build a popular movement to advance economic, social, and climate justice. In its first year of operation, RAD had a big impact in Vermont, playing huge roles in winning paid sick days in 2016, automatic voter registration in 2016, and election day voter registration in 2015. We do this through mass organizing, relationship development, supporting and training grassroots leadership, confronting people in positions of power, and grassroots mobilization and lobbying on legislative, corporate, and local campaigns. RAD's organizing model is rooted in our mission to organize within our communities to build the power necessary to challenge and dismantle structural oppression, racism, sexism, classism, and environmental destruction. To do this, we must build a base of people who share our values and who are clear about their stake in taking action and building the collective power necessary to reshape the policies that affect our lives, communities, and ecosystems. This happens both through education, organized and intentional relationship building, and strategic campaigns, both legislative and electoral. For paid sick days, after helping narrowly pass paid sick days legislation in the spring of 2016, along with the Paid Sick Days Coalition, we knocked doors and generated thousands of support calls and emails to legislators, and we developed our plan to build on that victory to secure further workers' rights protections in Vermont. That's resulted in the Raise Up Vermont campaign. It's our umbrella campaign encompassing our statewide economic justice issue campaigns. We're working on a number of critical campaigns this year, including passing a statewide paid family and medical leave program, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, strengthening enforcement and protections against employees being misclassified as independent contractors and denied their legal rights and benefits, and fighting hidden forced arbitration clauses by providing a pathway for consumers, workers, and vulnerable adults under contract with powerful corporations to take enforcement action when they're harmed. Many contracts now mandate arbitration for dispute resolution, which shields corporations from public accountability for their actions. Right now, tens of thousands of people in Vermont continue to struggle with poverty wages, lack paid family and medical leave to care for their families, experience wage theft or are misclassified as independent contractors, or become ill or injured at work because of dangerous working conditions. We at RAD believe that everyone has the right to live and raise their families in dignity. In 2018, we have a real opportunity to join other progressive states in leading the nation to demonstrate what is politically possible in this country by passing legislation to address all these issues facing thousands of people in our state. We're excited to be joined today by experts, legislators, and business owners who care deeply about this issue and who've been working hard for years to advance the movement in Vermont to create a statewide paid family and medical leave program in Vermont. A program like this would make an enormous difference in the lives of thousands of working class and middle class families, alleviating the terrible burden on so many working parents that today are forced to return to work too soon after they have a child. This program would also mean that workers could afford to take much needed time to heal from an illness or injury, and families could afford to take care of their elderly relatives in times of need. And there are benefits to Vermont's business community as well. Small businesses could afford to provide this type of common sense protection to their workers. Paid family and medical leave would help to make Vermont work for both small businesses and working families, evening the playing field for small businesses and making Vermont an even better place for families. Tonight we'll be joined by House Speaker Mitzi Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Becca Balint, Representative Diana Gonzalez of Winooski, Jubilee McGill of Rights and Democracy, Ashley Moore of Main Street Alliance of Vermont, and Nicole Grenier, owner of Stowe Street Cafe. After all these amazing women present, we'll have time for those listening in to ask questions to any of our speakers. You can pose any questions in the chat function on this Zoom meeting, and if the question is for a particular speaker, please mention that. And if you're calling in, you can text your questions to me at 802-578-2969. Again, that's 802-578-2969. So tonight we are going to start with Jubilee McGill, who is a Rights and Democracy member, followed by Nicole Grenier, who's a business owner, our Vermont expert, Ashley Moore from Main Street Alliance, Representative Diana Gonzalez, House Speaker Mitzi Johnson, and then we'll end with Becca Balint. So next up is Jubilee McGill. Jubilee is a resident of Bridport, works for a nonprofit affordable housing trust in Addison County, and she also serves on the RAD Addison County Organizing Committee and the statewide Raise Up Vermont campaign. She's here tonight to offer her story as a working parent who did not have the benefit of paid family and medical leave. Thanks, Jubilee.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jubilee. So years ago, my husband and I were very surprised to find out I was pregnant with twins. Pretty early on in the pregnancy, I had medical complications, so I was on bed rest and then modified bed rest for most of the pregnancy, which took a huge toll on us financially, not being able to work. So when the boys were born, we got home from the hospital, and then the next day my husband had to go back to work. He could have taken unpaid leave time off. We could not afford it. So he went right back to work, and I was alone with two infants. And my husband had to work very, very long days. He worked 6 days a week regularly. So I was pretty much on my own and exhausted, and I developed postpartum depression and anxiety. And that first year of their life was just agony, despair, stress, so many aspects of my life I'm still picking up the pieces of today. It's taken that long to recover. Having paid family and medical leave would have been so important to my family. It would have saved us so many tears, and it would have meant such a better start for my children. And I see it every day. It is something that is so important, and I really hope to see some change happen this year. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being willing to share your story with us tonight, Jubilee. Next, we're going to hear from Nicole Grenier. Nicole brings the perspective of a business owner to this conversation. Nicole holds a master's degree of healthcare administration from the University of Scranton and has served as a mental health professional with over 18 years of experience in a variety of roles serving children, youth, and families while collaborating with school teams and the local systems of care in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Vermont. Most recently, Nicole has embarked on her newest adventure as the owner of the Stowe Street Cafe in Waterbury, where she continues her commitment to building community and advocating for issues affecting Vermont children and families. She's also a board member of the Main Street Alliance of Vermont, serves as a steering committee member of the Vermont Early Childhood Alliance, and is a member of the Building Bright Futures Advisory Council. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Hi. So I am also the mother of two young children, ages 3 and 9, and so I have had the firsthand experience of how challenging it can be to access affordable, quality childcare here in Vermont. As a former director of early childhood mental health programs, I also know that it's incredibly expensive to run a quality child care program that can also be affordable for families. When I was supervising my staff in mental health, I had over 45 employees. We were serving over 100 children and families who were at risk. And honestly, between the staff, between the clients, there was no difference in the challenges among any of the parents, regardless of income, education, or employment. We were all struggling to find openings of the best child care that we could afford. And we were lucky when we could find any quality care at all, despite the financial burden that was incurred. As a business owner, I support this incredibly, and I want very much to be able to support my employees if that is something that they need. And I also would love to have the opportunity to attract more employees to our state. And I think being able to offer something like this would be an incredible opportunity. Beyond the child care puzzle, I think that certainly many of us, myself included, are also facing parents becoming older, and certainly any of us are subject to a potential illness. And I just think that having something like this in place would go such a very long way to be able to ensure a healthy economy for Vermont and also stable families and communities. I apologize for my dog.
Thanks, Nicole. Next up this evening, we are going to be hearing from Ashley Moore. Ashley Moore is the Paid Family and Medical Leave Coalition's Policy and Campaign Lead. Ashley was born and raised in Rutland, Vermont. She graduated from the University of Vermont in 2014 and subsequently attended SIT Graduate Institute, where she earned her master's degree in sustainable development with a concentration in policy analysis and advocacy. Ashley's the campaigns director for the Main Street Alliance Vermont, where she's worked for the past 4 years. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you. So as Kate said, I work for the Main Street Alliance of Vermont, which is a small business public policy organization. We work with small business owners statewide. Right now we have about 650 members, and as Nicole mentioned, she's one of our board members, and we're very lucky to have her. So the Main Street Alliance co-chairs the Vermont Family Medical Leave Insurance Coalition with Voices for Vermont's Children, and the coalition currently represents about 33 organizations now, which it also obviously includes Rights and Democracy. And we are collectively working with the legislature and the public to ensure that we can create a statewide family and medical leave insurance program for Vermonters. And so, as Nicole mentioned, Main Street Alliance, obviously being a small business organization, we not only see this as a support for workers and families in Vermont, but for small businesses. We know that most very small businesses in Vermont, which is the majority of small businesses in Vermont, have fewer than 20 employees. So it's a significant sector of the economy. Most small businesses of that size cannot generally afford to offer a paid maternity leave benefit or maternity leave benefit or short-term disability insurance. And so creating this program would really level the playing field, making sure that everyone has access to it regardless of where they work, and hopefully self-employed business owners as well. And so we have been working on this with the House the past year, which I'm sure Speaker Johnson and Representative Gonzalez will discuss after this. And so the House was successful in moving a bill, which is really great. And so we're hoping to make it through the Senate and to the governor, and hopefully be the 7th state with a family and medical leave insurance program. As some of you might know, there are 5 states in Washington, D.C. are these locations in the United States that currently have programs. California was actually the first ever in 2002, although Rhode Island had a public temporary disability insurance program since 1942 that they then expanded to include parental leave. And so we would not be the first state, but we would certainly be ahead of the curve in being the seventh. And we have a lot of successful models to look at. Research in California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, New York, all of the states will show that these programs have been incredibly successful for workers and families and business owners. And so we have something to base our program off of. And I'm feeling really optimistic that this can be a reality. And so I guess I'll just wrap up there. And then after everyone's done, if anyone has any particular questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. And I apologize if I sound congested. I'm getting over a cold, so it might sound a little muffled on the speaker.
Great, thanks so much, Ashley. Next we have Diana Gonzalez. Diana serves as a progressive representative from Winooski. She holds degrees from Western Washington University and the School for International Training in Brattleboro, and is currently pursuing a doctorate in education, leadership, and policy at the University of Vermont. She also somehow finds the time to run an independent consulting business, Bronze for Discourse, and volunteers as a trainer with Rights and Democracy's Movement Politics electoral trainings. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Diana.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here and for your interest in this very important legislation and generally the topic. So as Ashley mentioned, that this was I think Ashley mentioned this, that this was in my committee, and I was part of helping it pass out of the House. So I sit on House General, which includes labor issues. And so what we haven't talked about so far is some of the specifics about the bill and how it's changed and hopefully will change for the better. So this amazing coalition of folks that have come together have the originally proposed bill was for 12 weeks and was for 100% wage replacement and included both bonding with a new baby, caring for someone in your family who is ill, or for yourself if you were ill. And then it also included folks that were self-employed, a way for people to be able to buy in. And so, and also originally it was a shared cost between employers and employees. So some of those changed in the Senate, and some of that changed in the House, and we're hoping to change some of those back in the Senate. So in the House, there was concern about the cost of it, as kind of we are concerned about costs anytime we're looking at legislation and how it's going to impact. And I think, unfortunately, people have been looking at people being the folks that scaled it back. We're looking at the short term rather than even the medium term, and how having an insurance policy will really benefit just everyone for such a small amount of money. And so I really think that it's important to keep it or to return it back to 100% wage replacement as much as possible, and to have 12 weeks. So the House version that we were able to pass out brought it down to 6 weeks and brought it down to 80% of wage replacement. But as we know, so many folks are living paycheck to paycheck and would not be able to afford to take any time off if it was 80% replacement instead of 100% replacement, which would not be able to utilize this amazing insurance program, would be a detriment to individual families as well as to all of Vermont. And the other piece that I think is really important is that we look at self-employment. So Ashley's got these great numbers on how many folks in Vermont are self-employed, and how that's a really increasing demographic of folks who are self-employed, and that we also want to attract more people to Vermont. And that, as we know, it's a wonderful place to live here, and with the increasing amounts of telecommuting that people can do, we want to be able to provide that space. And having a family medical leave insurance policy that that allows for people who are self-employed to be able to buy into would really be a double win, so that we could increase the safety net for everyone, and as well as increasing people being able to be more self-employed. So these are some really key things, and in the House we were able to the big political stumbling block that we had that we were able to get over was in terms of where the burden lies. If it's equally split between employers and employees, and it wasn't able to get out of the House with an equal split, and all the burden got moved to employees with an option for employers to buy in, so that can keep the competitive edge for employers who want to have that as an additional benefit. And so I think that when we think about balancing politics and policies, that was one big thing that that folks really in the House had the need to drop that, to have one side of the equation be the responsible one. So again, those are some things that happened in the House, and Speaker Johnson can speak more from the larger side, but from my work in the committee, and was very excited to be part of it.
Great, thanks so much, Deanna. And next we'll be hearing from Mitzi Johnson, who was elected Speaker of the House last year, the third female speaker in our state, and has served as representative of the Grand Isle Chittenden District since 2003. Speaker Johnson is also the executive director of the Adaptive Leadership Network and has been a leader around issues of hunger, marriage equality, and many other issues during her years of public service. Thanks for joining us, Mitzi. And Mitzi is not unmuted right now, so we're going to resolve that technical difficulty.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so sorry. You weren't just reading my lips. So yes, okay, so restart. So I'm really pleased that the House was able to take such early and decisive action on this piece of legislation. When we talk about how to make Vermont more attractive for young families and young people to come and stay, and when we talk about how to make the Vermont economy work for everybody, not just the wealthy few, I think this is a no-brainer. Right, it's a key step. It's really important. It's frankly not an enormous leap. We've always been in Vermont very strong supporters of all kinds of insurance, that really strong safety net to make sure that folks can take care of themselves and their families. And so by having some sort of program that allows everybody to help their neighbors and know that they themselves have that safety net when they're ready to welcome a new baby or a new child into their family, when themselves or their partner are sick, or when they have to go and time comes to take care of a parent. This is an important step. And while 6 weeks is not the most generous program in the country, I think it is a very important step. I mean, a month and a half of paid leave would make a difference to so many families. And so I'm really pleased that we could move this forward and continue the conversation with the Senate. Vermonters are struggling to meet their basic needs, and just over 1 in 4 Vermont households don't have the cash on hand to survive an emergency of just a few $100s. And that might be filling a fuel tank an extra time during the cold snap. That might be car trouble, but that also could be an illness that takes somebody out of work for a week or two. And to think that, if you look across the street at the house and you look at your neighbor to the right and the neighbor to your left, one of those people can't survive such a small emergency or hiccup in their budget. We really need to rethink the way we think about affordability in this state and the way we think about sustainability for families' budgets. So I'm really looking forward to working with the Senate to really create a strong paid family leave program that that helps Vermonters better care for their families and build that strong, healthy future for the state.
Thanks so much, Mitzi. And finally, we're going to hear from Becca Balint. Becca, hailing from Brattleboro in southeastern Vermont, has served as Windham County Senator since 2015 and has been our Senate Majority Leader since last year. Rebecca earned her master's in education from Harvard University in 1995 and her master's in history from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst in 2001. She writes a popular weekly op-ed column in the Brattleboro Reformer, serves on the Workforce Committee of the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, and is a CTI-trained coach who works with groups and individual clients on fulfilling professional and personal goals. And Becca's right here next to me, and she's gonna, I'm gonna let her take my seat so she can jump on. Thanks so much, Becca.
Good evening, I'm Becca Balint. I was really excited when this bill passed out of the House. We were watching them to see what would happen, and we are eager in the Senate to take up the work. I know in talking with my colleagues in the House, they are hoping that part of the work that we might do in the Senate is restoring some of the aspects of the bill that were taken out in the House. So one of those things is really looking at what do independent workers do when they are sole proprietors and how they might be able to take advantage of this really important program. We're also interested in hopefully continuing to make it a more robust benefit for folks, hopefully pushing it back up closer to the 12-week mark. You never know what's going to happen in the committee work, as Representative Gonzalez and the Speaker know. It is my hope that we will be able to craft a bill, get it out of committee, and bring it to the full floor of the Senate. There are so many reasons why I support this work. One is very personal. When I think back on my own experience in watching my grandmother die, like many elderly people, she moved in with her children to help take care of her. And as often the case, it's a very gendered role that usually happens, that women will often leave the workforce to take care of an aging parent. And that was definitely true in my household. It was my mother that gave up her work to be home to take care of my grandmother. And it is a particular painful time when I think about all of the people that don't have the opportunity to have someone at home taking care of them, that we were able to do that financially. My dad was able to support us so my mom could do that. But when you don't have that safety net, I know from friends and family, they don't know who is going to be the person at that person's bedside. I also think about a family member that I have close to me who has long-term health concerns, and my sister and I worry about how we're going to be able to take care of him as he gets older. So this is not unusual. This is what all Vermonters are facing. So on a very personal level, I know that this is the kind of benefit that working Vermonters need. We need a network of support for people. It is about when you have a newborn child at home, as our earlier speakers mentioned. Absolutely, I remember that time in my own life. But it's also about our aging demographics in Vermont. So we really have to think about the fact that so many of us have parents that are going to require this care. And this is a benefit that so many families are going to be grateful to have. I also want people to think about, as I mentioned earlier, it's really about a gendered issue as well. That it's often the women in the workforce that make these decisions or feel like they are compelled to make these decisions to stay home to take care of family members. And this is an opportunity for people, women in particular, not to feel set back in their careers if they have to take time off. Another thing that you might not think of, I do work locally around school absenteeism. And I remember speaking to a parent a few years ago where she felt like she had to make a decision about not sending one of her high school age kids to school because the youngest child was home and sick. And she knew if she took time off from work to take care of that child, that she would probably lose her job. And so you have you have these situations in Vermont where parents piece things together, and you see that there's chronic absenteeism because they're trying to close a gap that they have in the care at home. So it touches so many families. And I really want us to think about how we often in politics, we care a lot about issues and we give a tremendous amount of airtime and lip service to making Vermont a better place, but we have to really match it with policy. And so I'm eager to work on the bill that came from the House, hopefully strengthen it and get something on the governor's desk. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Becca. Really looking forward to see how this looks after it gets through the Senate in this legislative session. And now we have three questions that we would like our various participants to try to address. Two of them are targeted, but one is a more general question. And so if one of you is willing to take up the question, then just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll give you an opportunity to speak to the issue. So the first question is, how much would this program cost at the personal level? Is there somebody who could speak to that?
I could speak to that unless somebody else wants to. I don't want to be a question hog. So as the bill passed the House, the cost is a 0.141% payroll deduction, which in English means if you are making minimum wage, the cost would be roughly $30 a year. And so you could then take that calculation if you wanted to do it for your own salary and figure out how much it would cost you individually. But that's kind of the baseline number that we generally use when talking about the cost. As it was introduced, which was a 0.93% payroll deduction split evenly between employer and employee, I believe it was roughly 0.465% each. I think it was around 70 per year if you make minimum wage for the more comprehensive benefit. I would have to double check on that number, but it sounds like that's accurate.
Okay. Hi, I'm popping in here. My name is Isaac Graham. I'm the Political Engagement Director with Rights and Democracy. And my car was almost about to get towed, so Kate is out helping move my car. Thanks, Kate. Happy to be the token male here in this, and I'm just really excited to be with all these amazing women who are making this happen, and just super excited to be a part of it. So we have a couple more questions I wanted to bring forward, and hopefully this isn't something that I just missed, but we have one that it just asks, what kind of difference has this program made in other states where it's been passed? And I think that, if anyone has answers about how this works in other countries, I think that could be relevant as well. Is there anyone who would want to take that on or has anything they'd want to share?
Great. So I know there's an actual raise your hand function on Zoom, but I don't know where that is. So just did my actual hand. I'll share an anecdote of my sister who lives in California, and that she was able to utilize this program for three of her children. And it made a huge difference that she was able to stay home with her kids and not go deeply into debt, that they were, and not to say that she did put some things on her credit card during that time, the 3 months that she had with her kids, because she didn't, in California, it's not 100% wage replacement, but it just made a huge, huge impact on her ability to care for her children and not go in. Yeah, it made a huge difference. So from that personal experience, I know that the bonding that she was able to do with her children and that her husband was able to do with her kids and the stress relief, and really contrasting that to the myriad of testimony that we heard in committee from many people, like what we heard today from Adrielle, and these negative experiences that we're having in Vermont. And So there's lots of statistics that I'm sure other folks can offer, but just that one of like, it makes a difference.
The governor question. Okay, another question was, where does the governor stand on paid family leave? Is there anyone who would like to take that? I see Mitzi's eyebrows moving. Would you like to take that one on?
Sure.
Okay.
The eyebrows were more in the, I don't know, we'll find out. You know, he laid down the law, last week, I guess, in the state of the state, where he talked about no new taxes, and so that would hint at him not looking at this favorably, and yet he keeps talking about affordability, and he's leaving out big segments of the population where affordability is concerned. You know, when you think about the people that don't have any sort of paid maternity leave and don't have the financial resources to give up a paycheck for a chunk of time, that's substantial. So no, I don't. He hasn't talked about this specifically, but he has talked about not wanting to do anything that raises taxes. If he's serious about affordability, he should sign it.
Okay. Thank you. So I saw a question, and now I can't see where to read it, but I think the gist of it was,
What's the Senate going to do?
yeah, this is for Becca. Do you hope the Senate will bring the wage replacement up to 100%? Where can people check out the bill as it stands right now? And what would happen if someone works in Vermont but lives outside of the state?
Okay, great question. So I'll start with where you can read the most recent version of the bill as passed by the House. And you can get on the Vermont legislative website, and it's the bill number is H196. And so my hope in the Senate is that we will start from the bill as it was introduced. And so you can also find the as introduced language as well on the legislative website. I know in speaking with members of my caucus, the only disappointment that they had in seeing it pass in the House was how much it had changed. And of course, this is not a critique of the House. This is the work of government. As we always say, it's like making hamburger, and you don't want to necessarily know what's in it or when it went into it. But in talking with members of my caucus, they really felt like it was a bit of a lost opportunity. We really wanted to make it more robust. So yes, that is my hope, that we'll bring it back up to the as introduced legislation. I wish I could promise that, but it's going to take all different twists and turns as it works through my chamber. What was the other question?
Yeah, so there's just two follow-up questions, which are, so to clarify, is this planned as an optional payroll deduction that employees can enroll in, ? And is the rate 0.141% for everyone, or is it progressive?
So, and I'm gonna kick that back over to the House, since they were part of crafting that piece. So Mitzi or Diana.
So yes, it's 0.14% for everybody, making it progressive while attractive to do so. Is rather complicated, because I may get one paycheck in this job and one paycheck in this job and a little bit more money over here for something else. So, so unlike income taxes where all that stuff gets trued up annually, this was a way to make it feasible to be able to administer, keeping in mind that when everybody has the same rate, somebody making $100,000 is going to pay in a whole lot more than somebody who makes minimum wage. So people aren't paying in the same amount. I think that's one important point. And I just wanted to follow up on two other little thoughts that occurred to me as we were having other pieces of this conversation. One of the other real difficulties when you have a baby or adopt a new baby is and getting back to work is finding childcare. And infant care in particular is very expensive and very difficult to find, particularly if you work a second shift job or third shift or something like that. And so by giving parents that time and opportunity to bond with their child and stay home and deal with any recovery issues and in that really key time in your brand new family's life, you're also alleviating some of the statewide pressure that we see on childcare and infant care in general. So I think that's an important side benefit. And I know there's been some question about the 100% wage replacement versus that came out of Diana's committee versus the 80% wage replacement that came out of Ways and Means. And a piece of that is the legislative process of trying to see what works for people and where to start. And one of the thoughts behind it was that because the wage replacement is taxed differently than income, in addition to which you don't have some of the expenses of driving and getting to work and all that kind of stuff, it's actually not a 20 point difference because the wage replacement isn't taxed in the same way that income is. So the two numbers are 80% is a lot closer than you'd think to what your pay would be if you were working.
Thank you. That's helpful. I actually had one personal question I wanted to ask, and whoever would be the right person to take it, I welcome that. I saw that I believe what passed out of the House had capped those who pay in at $150,000 a year. So does that mean that people who make more than $150,000 a year are not paying into the program as the way it came out of the House, or what does that mean? Maybe Mitzi, you could take that, or Diana.
Oh, yeah. Mitzi, do you want to take that? So it means that if you make above $150,000, then that amount above that $150,000 is not taxed. So if you make $200,000, the first $150,000 that you make, that money is going into the insurance program, but that additional $50,000 is not going into the insurance program. And my understanding, and that's from Ways and Means, that that change about that stop of money coming into the program. And my understanding of their thinking behind that is that the original bill at $150,000, the amount that you received back ended at $150,000. So in terms of the wage replacement. So my understanding of their thinking was that if the wage replacement is stopping at $150,000, even if you're making more than that, then you shouldn't be paying in that additional percentage.
Okay. So I had one last question, which was, and again, this is not specifically for any one person. What would you want to say to someone who says that we can't afford to do this in our state, or that we've been doing just fine without it?
Well, we haven't been. This is Becca. We have not been doing fine without it. I think we all know that. The governor knows it because he says we need to protect the most vulnerable. We're not currently doing that adequately. And one of the things that I always say to constituents when they make that argument is that we always pay the piper. We can either pay the piper now or we can pay later, but we always pay. So I would rather pay in what I think is the more moral way of doing business, which is to help people live a life of dignity and support so that they have a base from which to really have a life in which they can thrive and flourish in Vermont, and not pay down the road when we have additional costs because we haven't taken care of people in the way that they deserve.
Well, that's a good answer. Is there anyone else who'd want to add to that? Yeah, Diana.
Just want to add really looking at the life cycle of someone and what is, and the ways that a paid medical leave insurance benefits and the entire scope. So if we take an infant that is staying home with a parent, their income that they're going to earn over their entire life has increased. We know that. Those studies have shown that if you have a parent stay home with you, that your earning income potential is higher. So that means that infant's life is better. That means that the taxes that we're going into our state are better. That means that when that infant is retired, that they have more money in retirement, that there's less likely to need state money, that the parent that stays home with that child and doesn't lose their job because they were able to maintain their life and return to work, because we know from all the studies from around the world that when parents have paid leave, that they are more likely to return to the workplace instead of less. So that particular parent, which most likely is a woman, that she will have a higher Social Security when she retires. She'll have a higher retirement. She'll have a higher quality of life and be less likely to rely on state assistance. And then when we look at both of those people, and when they are needed in retirement or have an illness throughout their life, because we know what happens at any point of your life, that you can have a debilitating illness that you need care for, that having people come in and out of your family members to be able to support you is overall cheaper. And that so many times we can look at the initial moment of a baby or an illness and say, yes, that family, that individual is benefiting from it in that moment or in those few months of need, in those few weeks. But it really is a life cycle issue, and a life cycle issue of not just for those particular individuals, but for the state, and how it is that we're supporting people when if we are not assisting people to maintain their place in the workplace, then we as a whole state are hit by that.
Thank you, Diana. So I haven't seen any other questions come in. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, great. Okay. We have another. So the question would be, would this leave be available to families who take in foster kids? Ashley looks like she can answer that question.
Yes, the leave covers welcoming a new child, whether it's through birth, adoption, or foster.
Great. Okay. Do you have anything else? Okay. So thanks, Kate, for making sure my car didn't get towed. I think we actually got through a lot in a shorter time than I was expecting, which is great. I just want to thank all of our speakers who gave this time. Oops. Nope. Okay. Hopefully folks can hear me. So I want to thank all of our speakers who took time out of a very busy schedule. I know that our legislators work incredibly hard here all day. And I want to thank Jubilee for joining us. I know you also work very hard and long, and you have kids to care for. And Ashley and Nicole, I know you're all really dedicated to this. And I wanted to say to everyone watching, and to all of our members, and to folks who watch this later on, because we'll be sharing this video out throughout the legislative session, both on our website and through social media, that this kind of thing is a chance for Vermont to be the 5th or 6th state in the entire country of one of the 2 countries in the world. That's 7th. Thanks, Ashley. Got the guru. But there are 2 countries in the world that don't have some sort of paid family and medical leave program, and it's the kind of American exceptionalism that is a really sad reality, that we can be this outlier that denies such common sense and basic programs that do so much for people in other countries around the world, that's just proven to benefit the health and well-being of families, of children, of communities, and all the institutions that serve us. When we don't invest in families and in young children and in the chance for people to care for each other, then we're paying for it again in the long run, and all of the other ways that we have to pay for an unhealthy society. And we can all be a part of making that happen in Vermont. And what's beautiful about this state is that we all have a chance to be really in touch with our legislators, to make sure that they know loud and clear where we stand on this, that the governor knows loud and clear that people support this, and that if he actually cares about vulnerable people in our state, that he should be standing arm in arm with the folks who want to make this kind of program a reality in Vermont. But it's not going to happen if people aren't involved. So I really implore everyone who's watching and everyone who watches this in the coming weeks to get involved. Share your story if you have one. We learned a lot of statistics here today, but it's really stories that I think capture the importance of making these kinds of policies real, because they have real life impacts for our neighbors and for ourselves. I know that I want to have children, and this would be a huge difference for myself. I know there's a lot of young people who want to live in Vermont or who do live in Vermont who would really, really benefit from this. But it's not just about young people, right? This is about workers. This is about caring for our elderly. This is about caring for each other. There's a couple simple ways that you can get involved right now. One would be to sign the Raise Up Vermont petition, which you can see here. I'm going to share my screen. And there's just a petition you can sign, and then there's a story form at the bottom where you can share your own story. And we are built to help follow up with people who want to share their stories and really help you craft that in a way that's powerful. I try to act as a conduit between all of our members and folks who want to be involved in the State House, but who have very busy lives, and facilitate that kind of conversation that should happen more and more between community members around the state and the folks here in the State House who are trying to do the right thing, and some who really need a push to do the right thing. Right? And we need to give that push, because this is not an easy lift. It's not easy to be at the forefront and to be a leader in doing the right thing. It takes years and years. It takes people laughing at you and telling you you're crazy. And then eventually we will win, and people will see that this makes sense when all the positive impacts that happen in every other state that have passed this, and every other country in the world that has figured this out, when those come to fruition. But again, it's going to take a lot of work over the next couple months to make this happen. So please sign the petition at radvt.org/raiseupvt. We'll be following up with everybody with more information, but this takes everyone being involved. This takes everybody contacting their legislators, sharing their stories, coming out to our actions, learning more, and staying involved. So I want to once again thank all of our speakers, both legislators, the experts, the workers, the people who really are on the ground working on this day in and day out. And I want to thank all of our members of Rights and Democracy and everyone who's making this happen. And we will be in touch, because we've got a lot of work to do together. So thank you all so much. Thanks again to our speakers, and have a great night.
Good night.
Thanks.